You know, earlier today we did the skills, how to travel talk, and I just called the folks at the travel show and said, I'm here, why don't we book another one where I can just give people the very best of Italy. So we're going to have an hour now, and I'm going to just talk as fast as is realistic and show you as many good images of my favorite country in Europe, Italy. So right now there's a lot of people going to take photographs of me, so we'll just do that. Italy, get your cameras up, take your shots, then you can put them away. Hitchhiking through Chicago. Come over here, all right. There you go. Okay, now if you got a trip coming up, your trip is far more important than this little photograph. Okay, so there we go. I want to share with you my favorite things about Italy, and fundamentally, Italy is sort of it's organized chaos, okay? Caos organizzato, or something like that. Italians understand that. If you go to Italy, my measure of a good traveler is how they enjoy Italy. If somebody tells me, oh, Italy is just, you know, traffic jams, temper tantrums, body odor, stray hairs, people ripping me off, you know, all that, I just think you would enjoy Denmark. I love Italy because of all that stuff. And I find if you like Italy as far south as Rome, go further south because it gets better. If Italy's getting on your nerves by the time you get to Rome, don't go further south because it gets worse, okay? Italy intensifies as you go farther south. Now, you know, I employ 80 people in Seattle. We took 12,000 people on 400 different tours this year. We've got 30 or 40 guidebooks out on European travel. Italy is our hottest destination. We've done 15 travel shows on Italy. We've got our the best-selling guidebook in the United States to any place outside of Disneyland is this book here. I mean, Americans love Italy for good reason. Okay, so I'm going to go through it really quickly. This is the book that we're kind of peddling right now. It's the book I've really given more of my energy to than any other book. I just am so proud of this book, and if you enjoy Italy, you'll want to travel with the new version of that book. Let me just say right now, the show, they said they're not going to kick people out at 5. You know, I'm going to go for an hour like a motor mouth, and then I'm going to stand over here for as long as you'd like to just autograph things and so on. But because of the size of this group and everything, I'm not going to be posing for photographs over there. You can shoot all the pictures you want, but it just takes forever if I have to pose and we have to figure out somebody else how to use your camera and all that. So forgive me for that, but take all the shots. You can do this or whatever you like, but I'm just going to be autographing, and you need to move on through because we're going to have a bunch of people that want to take care of that before the show's over. Okay. The key in Italy more than any other place is to equip yourself with good information and expect yourself to travel smart. You'll find people in Italy whose trips are chaos, they're disasters, because they're using old information or no information at all. Italy changes a lot. You want up-to-date information. One of your keys is to become melting into the culture. One of these guys might be a tourist. That could be you. You need, I don't think they are, but I mean it could be, one of those guys could be a tourist. And that's your challenge. You need to connect with the people. People is what carbonates your experience. If you see a little festival in a town, this is in Verona, and once a year the older kids, they have a festival, so the older kids can teach the younger kids how to make a good ravioli. Now that's not going to be in your guidebook. I'm not going to Google ravioli and little chefs. I'm just going to be on the ball when I'm traveling, and if I see something like that, I'm going to get in there, I'm going to meet the kids, I'm going to eat some ravioli, I'm going to have some fun. You need to get out, get into the streets, and have some fun with the people as you're traveling around Italy. Now, of course, when we think of Italy, we think of wine and we think of women, right? So you're going to find all sorts of that kind of exuberance in the street, wine and women, and also the Catholic Church. I mean, a lot of Italians, they don't go to church except for Easter or Christmas, or if they get a near motorcycle accident, they'll go straight to church and hang their helmet up there at the proper saint's chapel, okay? So it's a fascinating kind of culture from that kind of history point of view. One of the keys for me is to go into the neighborhoods and find a chance to hang out and just talk with the locals. And locals are ready to talk in Italy. You know, in France, you got to get the language right and all that. There's a lot of sensitivities. And I love France, but that's a different style. In Italy, it's just they will wrestle you to the ground to get that conversation going. And it's a beautiful thing if you're a traveler. This woman I call antipasta. And Italians love to eat, and there's something called casalinga, which is home cooking. What you want to find is the funky little restaurants down the street with no sign at all, with a handwritten menu, and you're having that home cooking. You need to know the local specialties, and you need to do it Italian style. When you go to Chianina beef country in Chianti, they don't ask you, how do you want your steak done? You say, I want a steak, and they cook it 7 minutes, and you get it. 15 minutes after you order it, you get your steak. That's the right way to do it. They know, and if you can find yourself in a steakhouse like that, you're going to have a great experience. Of course, Italians love their wine, and we'll know how to enjoy that as we travel and drink wine from people whose families made it. The gelato is one of the great edible souvenirs you could ever have anywhere in Europe. Remember, there's that sort of intensity in the streets. Every friend I've got in Italy has blown up and got upset with me once or another over the years, and they're always just right back with you. Don't take it personally. Roll with the punches, laugh. Don't take it personally when you have somebody, messing around with you in Italy. You're going to find some intensity and chaos in the streets because of the economic crisis. That's how Europe deals with things. Italy has a chaotic government. They've figured out a way to somehow make it all work, and today they're having a reality check because all across Europe they're, like us, they've been consuming more than they produce. They have a system of entitlements that's based on a young society where people don't live that long. Now they've got an old society where people are living really long and there's not so many workers, and they have to adjust, and it's not going to be easy. That's part of the flavor of Italy. If you want La La Land, as I said this morning, you can go to Orlando, but when you go to Italy, you're going to get the real world, and it's going to come with a few strikes. One of the key words for you to know in Italy is sciopero, right there. I don't know a lot of Italian words, but that's one you see a lot. That's strike. All right, I was just filming at a museum in Rome, and I went down into the manager's office, and she was giving us permission and going through all the crazy bureaucracy they have there. She had a 3-ring binder with all the strike notifications already pre-printed. You have to, there's different kinds of strikes, and they were just ready for the next strike. It's a way of life there. When you have a strike in Italy, it's not like, okay, somebody's going on strike, and for 6 months we'll have no school teachers or something like that. In Italy, generally, it's a nuisance strike. Next Tuesday, the trains are on a slowdown. Next Wednesday, there'll be no postal delivery or whatever. And you just need to talk to local people and be thinking ahead and dance yourself around those strikes as you can. It is critical for you to get out in the streets and stroll with the people. There's so much action in the streets in the early evening when the weather gets cool and everybody's out. It's multi-generational and people are out strolling. We need to be out there too. A lot of Italian men chase women like dogs chase cars. Okay, it's just kind of what they were designed to do. And from our point of view, it's kind of pathetic and disgusting, but it's going to happen, and you need to know about that. It's not unusual for an American woman who's a tourist to go to a hotel, check in, and have the little hotelier escort you to your room, and then escort you into your room, and try to, get along with you. And a lot of women think that's a rape attempt. Well, it's not. It's an attempt. But it wasn't a rape attempt, okay? And you just got to be strong and have a few good Italian words and get them out of there. But you're going to get that kind of inappropriate attention. And I'll tell you, I for 25 years was taking tour groups through Italy, and I know that women can dress and act and get eye contact in a way that's exciting, but it's misunderstood. If you're dressing hot and if you're talking about meaningful stuff and you're getting eye contact with some Italian guy, very good chance he's perceiving that as an invitation to just jump on you. You've got to not dress so exciting, not get eye contact, not talk about exciting, meaningful things. A lot of Italian women, when they go out in the evening, if they don't want to get hustled, they hold hands with their girlfriends. Doesn't have anything to do with them being gay or anything like that. It's just a common sense kind of message to guys that don't even bother chasing me. I'm just out with my friend and you're going to waste your time with me. You need to control that, but it's going to happen when you're out and about. Don't let it mess up your Italian experience. This, by the way, is a guy named Angelino. He runs a hotel where we used to take our tour groups. Just could not get him trained. We tried and tried year after year, and finally said, Angelino, we just cannot take our groups to your hotel anymore. Now, when you think about Italy, there's so many overlays, aren't there? And you got to, of course, look at the classical world. And look at this. I love this map of the Roman Empire because Rome is dead center in the middle. And, the story of Rome goes 1,000 years, from 500 BC to 500 AD. It grows for 500 years, it peaks for 200 years, and it drops for 300 years. The first half is the Republic. The last half is the no-nonsense, iron-fisted dictatorship, the Empire, okay? And when it got to the time of Christ, the beginning of the Pax Romana, that 200 years peak, this was the expanse of the Roman Empire. In fact, the word Rome no longer meant the city, but it meant the entire civilized world. Everything was either Roman or barbarian. If you spoke Greek or Latin, you could be in the empire. You're Roman. Everybody else, almost like animals, barbarians. Now, you need to have an understanding of that to understand your sightseeing in Italy, that's for sure. Also, of course, you got the Renaissance. And the Renaissance is literally the rebirth to the greatness of classical Rome. Rome fell in 500. There's 900 years of relative darkness, and then things kick into gear, starting in 1400 in Florence. You got that Renaissance period, the rebirth, and that's when we get Leonardo, Michelangelo, Raphael, and so on. We always look at the statues and the paintings, but the Renaissance was a way of thinking. This is a town called Palmanova. It's a Renaissance town. Look at the intellectual design there. That's from a humanist age. Not a higgly-piggly medieval age, it is humanist. And the Renaissance to me is humanism, and it's an exciting time, and we can have a lot of thought-provoking sightseeing, but you owe it to yourself to tackle Italy in a thoughtful way. Now, I don't want to make you paranoid, but I'll tell you, if you're sloppy, you're going to get ripped off when you're in Italy. There's all sorts of poor people, desperate people, Romanian people, gypsy people, just local unemployed people that see you as a rich sucker. And they're going to tail you, and they're going to grab your wallet. Now, you don't need to be paranoid. You just got to have a wallet or a purse that's only got a day's spending money, odds and ends, and a funny little note to the thief. Everything that matters, you leave in your hotel room, or you zip away, or tuck away, or button away. Put it in a money belt or something like that. This is a gypsy woman with her baby, and this was a tour group. Their guide just started talking, and she's camping out until the guide's done talking, and then she moves in, okay? She sees the tour group. They're naive, they're rich, they got cameras, they got zippers open on their purses. She's got a beautiful baby, big eyes, and a hand out. She's a pickpocket, she's not a beggar. Understand that, or you're going to get ripped off. You need to wear a money belt or have stuff zipped away. Whenever there's a crowd, you got to understand there's pickpockets at work. The most crowded and the most touristy bus in Rome is bus 64. I would bet 90% of all the theft on public transit in Rome happens on bus 64, because that's where all the tourists go, lacing together the train station, the Colosseum, and the Vatican. So be on guard when you have a crowd situation like this. People rub. Now, you know, it's okay when everybody's rubbing, but somebody's looking for your wallet. You just can't have a wallet that's available to pickpocket. In Italy, like in most of Europe, when you buy a ticket, you got to stamp it, you got to validate it. Many Americans are getting hit by $50 or $100 fines by plainclothes transit police because they buy a ticket and then innocently they go on the subway or go on the train without stamping it. If I'm a policeman, a plainclothes transit policeman anywhere in Italy, and I find an American tourist with a ticket that's not stamped, it's reasonable for me to think that you're traveling free, intending not to stamp your ticket and use it again. There's no slack cut for tourists or anything like that. You need to stamp your ticket, ka-chunk, and it has a date on it, then it cannot be used again. If he finds your ticket that didn't get stamped before you went on there, you're going to get hit really hard. They make a lot of money that way, and those are one of the pitfalls for tourists. So remember that. The train system in Italy is wonderful, and so is driving. I would say when you think about Italy, think of it as the size of California with 70 million people. You've got a wonderful train system connecting the great cities. You don't want a car in the big cities. Much as I like to do things efficiently, I would rather do the whole of Italy in an overlay by train and then pick up my car and get on the autostrada and go back where I wanted to do and then do what I wanted to do by car. Naples, Amalfi Coast, Cinque Terre, Siena, Venice, Florence, Rome, Milan, Lake District of Italy. If you're doing those places, you don't want a car. A car is a worthless, expensive headache. Trains are cheap, trains are reliable, trains are relaxing, cars are a headache. Now, if you're going to be tooling around the hill towns of Tuscany and Umbria, exploring Sicily, doing the Dolomite, something like that, a car can make a lot of sense. But your best way to do the major sites, I would say strongly, is without a car. If you do go by car, they've got great freeways. They've got freeways that just feel as fast and efficient as German freeways. The only difference is they've got toll booths. So every hour you have to stop and pay a toll. It's a small price to pay for the efficiency and the safety of going on a modern motorway. I do want to remind you we've got a lot of information that we've produced on Italy. We could change our name to Italy, Rick Steves Italy through the back door, from Europe through the back door, and probably do just fine. There's so much interest in Italy. If you need anything on Italy, we've covered it all. We've got the Italy book, which is the big, I think, 1,200-page brick that is the major book. We've got guidebooks to Rome, Venice, Florence with Tuscany. That would take the chapters out of the Italy book, expand them, and also cover the self-guided walks, which you don't get in the big Italy book, because it would be a 2,000-page book then. And that way you've got one portable book just for the great city that's got everything you need: eating, sleeping, sightseeing, itineraries, transportation, shopping, kids, entertainment, and also, to me, I'm so proud of the guided walks we've included in there. So you can do the walks when you like to in your language for free. We've also taken all those walks and made them available in finely crafted audio tours. They're entirely free. You get the Rick Steves Audio Europe app, download those walks, and you've got everything you need for Venice, Florence, and Rome for free. You don't even need the book if you choose just to go without it. And you can listen to the tours as you wander through the town on your own, saving $50 a crack, and probably getting a more reliable tour if you don't mind having me in your ear than you would if you waited for some local guide to do it in 2 or 3 languages if they show up, and so on. So that would be the city books. We've also got a map of Italy. Our maps are different than most because we rip it down to nothing and build it up with places not according to how populous they are, but how interesting they are for your sightseeing needs. At a glance, you can see all of my favorite places, everything you ever see in our TV show, popping right out on that map, which would be buried or non-existent on a normal map. So that would be the map designed for you to plan your trip. We've also done more TV shows on Italy than any other country. We've done 15 or 18 shows just on Italy, and Italy's well covered that way. And we have a phrase book. This is the best-selling phrase book in the United States on Italy because I don't speak the language. For 20 years, I struggled with Berlitz, and I know Berlitz knew his languages, but he never went to a hotel where you had to ask, at what time is the water hot? This phrase book knows what you need to know to communicate as you go around in Italy, and it's the big countries like Italy and Spain and France where you do have a language barrier because people who there can have a big world if they only speak their language. There's only 1 million people speaking Estonian. You bet they're going to be learning another language, or their world's pretty small. But you've got a big world if you're French, Italian, or Spanish speaking. Consequently, for us, it's a little more of a challenge from a language point of view. The phrase book has also got just a fun little twist to it. As I mentioned this morning, it's just fun if you're in a taxi and you can just pull it out and just say with very clear Italian, if you don't slow down, I will vomit. Okay? Now, this is the tour that I used to take around Italy, 22 days. Now we have to shorten our tours because Americans don't have enough vacation time. Whenever one of our tours doesn't sell, we snip a few days off of it and it sells. It's not people's fault, it's our system. We Americans put up with the shortest vacations in the rich world, and we just seem to be hell-bent on having shorter vacations yet. You know, I don't know why we're scrambling ourselves into an early grave. Europeans look at us like we're crazy, but that's just our reality. So, we got to be mature in our planning. Don't try to see it all. You got a short vacation. See what you like, which is comfortable. Assume you will go back. You will organize your priorities in the future to go back. If you had 22 days, this is what I would do in Italy, and that's what we're going to see now with slides really quickly. We're going to start in Milan. I always like to do open jaws. Fly into one part and out of another part. Fly into Milan, out of Rome. I start in the north because it's less stressful up here. We're going to finish in Naples in the south once you get good at Italy. It makes much more sense to do it that way. We're going to fly into Milan, but we're going to spend our first night in the easiest place in Italy, Verona on Lake Como. This is honeymoon country, magical. It's Italy with a Switzerland kind of calmness and efficiency. Then we're going to cut across to the mountains, the Dolomite, and stay in a mountain village and do some hiking. Then we'll go to Venice, 3 hours south to Florence, 2 hours over to the Cinque Terre. If you want the Riviera, this is my favorite slice of the Mediterranean coastline anywhere. The Italian Riviera, the Cinque Terre, 5 little towns, humble and not very touristy because you can't get tour buses there. The government protects the buildings. There's no big modern buildings. It's my favorite backdoor slice of the Italian coastline. Quick stop at Pisa to see the Leaning Tower, Siena, Assisi, Orvieto, all the beautiful little hill towns. And then we bypass Rome, going down to Sorrento as a base to see Naples, Capri, Amalfi Coast, and Pompeii before going an hour and a half back to Rome, where you finish your tour with a finale in the great city, 3 or 4 days there, and fly home. That would be a brilliant tour of Italy if you want to have a spine for that. Now, to cover some of those places, I mentioned the Cinque Terre, the Italian Riviera. Imagine staying in one of these towns. There's 5 towns like that. You can walk to each town. They're connected by train, tunneling through the mountains. This is my favorite, called Vernazza. A year ago, they had a horrific flood. It buried 2 of these towns in 8 feet of mud, destroyed every building on the lower level. They were uninhabitable for 6 months. With the army there and the local Red Cross and so on. Now they're back put together, everything is new, and they are ready for prime time. So don't worry about the flood, it's history. You'll go to the Cinque Terre now and it's as if there never was a flood. But can you imagine staying in a little town like this? This is just my favorite part of the Italian coastline. Manarola, Rio Maggiore, great hikes between towns, the Via dell'Amore, nice, easygoing resort action in the evening, wonderful restaurants. This is my favorite town of the 5, called Vernazza. So I don't have time today to give you specifics on this. Obviously, it would be covered in the books. Also, remember, if you don't want to buy a book, you can get a lot of this information on our website, and all of our TV shows are available on Hulu, hulu.com. You can just type in hulu.com and search Rick Steves Italy. You'd have 15 shows to choose from there. One of them is in half an hour just on this region. You go to my website and print out the script, and you got my prescription for the best experience in that part of Italy. Beautiful food in any of these places, because Italians are so passionate about good food. I mentioned the least stressful part of Italy. This is the freshwater Cinque Terre in the lake north of Milano, Lake Como, Lago di Como. Italians call it honeymoon country. I call it the very best place to convalesce. If I just needed a day just to relax and recharge, Varenna is my favorite. A 10-minute ferry ride across the way takes you to Bellagio, a famous Italian resort on the lakes. I like Varenna. I stay in a hotel like this, a Belle Epic kind of hotel, and then you get a ferry pass and you bounce around the island for a while, or the lake for a while. Beautiful situation like this. And Switzerland is just over the hill. I mean, you're 5 miles from Switzerland on that northern part of Italy with dramatic old world steamers to take you from town to town along the lakes. This is the resort town of Bellagio. There's a lot of different lakes up there. Everyone has his own personality. My favorite is Lake Como. From there, we like to head over to the Dolomites, the Italian Alps. They've got this unique limestone kind of structure. This is the highest alpine meadow, the biggest alpine meadow in Europe. And it's called Alpi di Susi. And I love to stay in a mountain hut up there, or stay, this is called Alto Adige or Sud Tyrol, reminding us that it's bilingual. It used to be part of the German-speaking world, ruled by Vienna, part of the Habsburg Empire, until they were lost World War I and Italy got that terrain. Today they're kind of like Italians that eat yogurt and yodel, okay? And it's, I love this kind of mix, and you'll enjoy that when you're in a place like Castle Ruth or the Alpi di Susi. To me, it's like going to the beach up in the mountains. You've got pet the alpine animals. You've got lounge chairs where you can just get a suntan, and it's a beautiful thing. This is my favorite town up there, called Castle Ruth. Now, Milano is the big capital city of the north. They say for every church in Rome, there's a bank in Milano. And I love Milano. I think we travelers need to have a reality check in our travels. Milan is important just to see modern Italy. Italy recently surpassed Britain in per capita income, and that's not because of Venice or San Gimignano. It's because of places like Torino, Genoa, and Milano. If you want one day in a reality check, big modern city, power lunches, all that kind of stuff, Milano is the city for you. Its cathedral is famous for its over-the-top Gothic flamboyant style. You can actually go up onto the roof and hike among all those spires and hang out there and get a suntan if you like. Next to it is a great mall from 100 years ago, the Victor Emmanuel Gallery. And of course, when you're in Milan, you can see the Leonardo's Last Supper. There's a lot of great sites. I can list 5 or 6 of them in the big cities of Italy that frustrate a lot of tourists because you cannot see them unless you have a reservation made well in advance. Your guidebook will explain, but it's critical. It's not hard, it's not expensive, but if you just show up in Milan and you go, oh, let's go see the Last Supper, you're not going to get in, period. All right? You need to be a good tour guide, get your hands on the information, and make reservations in advance for these special sites. Now we're going to go to Venice. As I mentioned, I've got individual books for Venice, Florence, and Rome, and this would cover everything you need there. Venice is shaped like a fish. You come in here at the mouth by train or car. There's a big parking lot. You get on the boat, and then that takes you down the Grand Canal, dumping out at the end of that sort of a big intestine, and you got the St. Mark's Square and Basilica of St. Mark's, and it's about an hour walk from here, about an hour walk if you strolled all the way from here to there, and everything in here is within easy walking distance. Most of the tourists are just in a shopping trance going between the Rialto Bridge and St. Mark's Square. You just walk 10 minutes any other direction, and the city is basically all yours. I love Venice because it's perfectly preserved. There's no new buildings, and it has a rich history. The government prohibits anybody from changing their buildings. Consequently, it looks today a lot like it did when this was painted centuries ago. You can go to the top of the bell tower and survey the place, and remember that for a couple hundred years, this was the most important economic and political and trading and military city in all of Europe. It's amazing to think that Venice started as a refugee camp after the fall of Rome. Peasants, farmers on the mainland, tired of getting overrun by rampaging barbarians, sick and tired of it, they said, let's move out into the lagoon and hope the barbarians don't like water. They gave up farming, they deforested that part of Italy, hammering in all sorts of tree trunks to give themselves a foundation, established a little fishing community, and eventually they became a trading empire that stretched all the way to the Holy Land. Their dollar was the dollar in Europe. It's an amazing story, and when you go to Venice, you need to check that out. It's mobbed with tourists during the day, but after hours and early in the morning, it really is all yours. As I mentioned, the typical American is right there, midday, peak season, looking at all those trinkets, and you need to break out of that trance. You need to go farther afield. Great opportunities for some fresh, beautiful Venetian seafood, wonderful dueling orchestras, get up early, get out late. That's when you have the city literally all to yourself. I was just there filming. We made 2 new shows. We're going to play them on WTTW here next time I'm in town in just a couple of weeks. And every morning we would get up a little earlier than normal, and we would film between 7:30 and 10 when the streets were quiet, the light was rich. And then after 10 o'clock, all the tour groups came in, and it just changed the whole personality of the place. This is the Rialto Bridge, lined with tourists. That's the commercial center. This is a Vaporetto, the equivalent of a city bus in Venice. I like to get my groups together and take over the front of a Vaporetto. This shot was when I was a tour guide back in the 70s. We still do that today, but now the Grand Canal tour is not me sitting up here barking out descriptions of the palaces and stuff, but it's in my audio tour that people get on their app, and anybody can do it anytime, in real time, for free. Download that, sit in that chair, and I get to introduce everything to you as you wind your way through the old city on the slow boat. This is where that takes you, San Marco. This is the gateway to the city. This is the Basilica of St. Mark's, connected to the Royal Palace, the Doge's Palace. And the big deal here from a pilgrimage point of view is Venice was an upstart city without any important relics. It was odd. They were so rich, so powerful, so everything, but no religious importance. We need some famous bones. The bones of St. Mark were available down in Egypt. They sent a crew down there to rescue those bones, brought them home, planted them in the church. Suddenly, Venice is on the pilgrimage trail also. That's quite exciting. And you have a mosaic here. There's St. Mark right there being brought into the church, looking a little grumpy after the long voyage from Egypt. Step inside and you get a look at what was one of the most flashy churches in Europe 1,000 years ago. You'll be able to see all the cliches in your travels. You got the glass blowing and all that. One thing I think is important to stress is art in situ. In situ rather than in museums. Most art was commissioned not to go into a museum, but to be in a church. I'd prefer to see the art where it was designed to be, whether it's a palace or a church or a square or whatever. In Venice, you've got incredible art treasures, masterpieces in their original place. The Church of the Frari, the Chiesa di Frari, is one of my favorite churches that way. You got 6 or 8 masterpieces by 6 or 8 great Italian painters, all in the original spot, in situ. Go in the winter, stay out late, enjoy Venice without the crowds. If you want to go on a gondola without spending a lot of money, for a couple bucks you can just do the George Washington crossing the Delaware kind of thing on one of these, where they have a ferry gondola that takes you back and forth where there's no bridge. That's called a traghetto. Locals rely on that, and I find it very handy from a tourist point of view. I think it's very important when you're in Venice to not worry about getting lost. You're going to get lost. Get as lost as you can Wander to your heart's content. That's the joy of it. And remind yourself, I'm on an island and I can't get off. You cannot get irrevocably lost. You're on a small island. So don't worry about staying found. And then when you want to find your way, there's no street names. Forget that. When you want to find your way, you can drop into any hotel, any bar, any restaurant, pick up a card. There's not a card in Venice that doesn't have a map of where they are, because you can't describe where you are in your card unless you have a map. So you got a little map, you are here. That locates where you are now. And remember, all you got to do is look above you and you will see signs pointing to the most famous landmark nearby. So here we go, St. Mark's, all right, either direction. It's just important to look above and you will still be lost. Walk to the far streets and you enjoy this kind of pastel magical world of Venice. Okay, 3 hours south is Florence. And Florence is very touristy, but Florence, you gotta see it. There's, this was the epicenter of that incredible cultural explosion that brought Europe out of the Dark Ages, the Renaissance. It happened right in Florence. You really owe it to yourself to bone up on that before your visit. By the way, I wrote a book called Europe 101, History and Art for Travelers. After 25 years of taking groups around, understanding what people need to know and what they don't need to know, and half of that book really pertains to Italy. If you're going to Spain or Portugal, you hardly need that book, but Italy is so fundamental and central to the whole story of Europe, whether it's Roman or whether it's Renaissance or Baroque or whatever, that book would really pertain to your travels. But one way or another, understand the history and the art. When you look at Florence, really all the most important sites are within a 15-minute walk in downtown. In the United States, we have this notion of the wrong side of the train tracks, right? Well, in Europe, a lot of times it's the wrong side of the river. The train tracks is what put, cities in the United States on the map. Well, it was rivers that put cities on the map in Europe, because that's how they would get their goods to market in the Middle Ages. In Rome, in Sevilla, in Florence, you've got the main part of the city, and then Trastevere, or Triana, or in the case of Florence, Oltre Arno. On the other side of the river, Oltre Arno, you got the crusty, artisan, funky little neighborhoods, proud, crusty locals that hate to go across the bridge, that sort of spirit, and that really colors up your sightseeing. Okay, here we have downtown Florence. There's the dome that marks the kickoff of the architectural Renaissance. When Michelangelo built the Dome of St. Peter's in Rome, he said, I can build a dome bigger, but not more beautiful than the dome in my hometown by Brunelleschi. This one here, the dome on the top of the cathedral. The word Duomo, by the way, in Italian means cathedral. So this is the dome of the Duomo in Florence. You can climb up to the top of the dome for a great view of the city. Here we got the river with the new city and the Oltre Arno, the crusty district, and the famous Ponte Vecchio. If you're overwhelmed by how big and exhausting a city is, remember, in the Middle Ages it wasn't sprawling like it is today, and as a tourist we're usually interested in the historic center. I give myself a break. I look at the map and I look for the circular road that goes out from the river. Did I know that 500 years ago that was the wall that protected the city from all the chaos outside? And then the stuff I want to see is within that wall. Now, as the city grew, the wall became ingrown and it just cluttered the city up, and they had congestion, and they thought, let's tear down the wall. We got a perfect circular boulevard. All over Europe, London, Vienna, Venice, you've got these, Paris, you've got these circular roads that go out from the river. That used to be the city wall. Cut it out in your mind, and what is left is what you are interested in. Suddenly that overwhelming city becomes, I think, psychologically much more manageable. So here we have Renaissance or medieval Florence all within the circular road on the river. Florence combined, the people of Florence 600 years ago combined art and science to give you this sort of passion for realism. To create a believable three-dimensional scene on a two-dimensional surface, because this guy knew the mathematics of perspective. That's very, very fundamental to the Renaissance, and in our travels we'll see medieval art, and then we'll see how they stepped into realism. In the Middle Ages, art was just telling a story. If it looked like a lion, that was good. It didn't need to be anatomically correct. You just needed to see lion, resurrection, all right? There's a dead guy, draped over his mom. That must be Jesus after taking down the cross. Well, in the Renaissance, you wanted to go beyond that. You wanted to have realism, and great artists really knew how the body worked so they could portray it more realistically, because in a case like this, you've got a pieta. And the whole theological idea is Jesus died. Jesus died for our sins, and this is the time when he is dead. He paid that debt, and you want to have a very dead, heavy body. A papier-mâché middle-aged Jesus, or medieval Jesus, that doesn't do it. He doesn't feel heavy. In the Renaissance, you want a heavy-feeling Christ to emphasize what the crucifixion was all about. You can get a great dose of Renaissance art in the Uffizi. Uffizi is the Italian word for offices, because this was the offices of the Medici, who ruled the city from here. This palace has a sky bridge connecting it. Today, the top end of the offices of the Medici is filled with the greatest art collection in all of Italy. So that's a real highlight to see there. And it is, what is it? It's 4:20, and I got about, do I have 20 minutes? Okay. 10 minutes. I'm going to go 15 at least. You're going to be lucky to get me out of here in 20, frankly. Okay. So we have the original spot of David right there. That's a fake today. You'll see is the real one, 20-minute walk layout. Inside the Uffizi, you've got all the beautiful Botticellis and the great paintings. And outside, you've got a long line of hot, miserable tourists waiting to get in. It's clear to me there's two IQs of European travelers, those who wait in line and those who don't. If you're waiting in line, I'm sorry, you're screwing up, you're lousy. There's no reason to wait in this line. Every time I go there, there's this line that goes 200 yards. I walk through the whole line looking at everybody. None of them have my book. People with my book visit the website, make a simple phone call a couple days earlier. They make an appointment. They walk right by those guys to the turnstile, tell them their name, their confirmation number, and they're in. They've seen the Botticelli, and they're out before these fools get up to the turnstile, all right? So I'm sorry to be so harsh about that, but your trip's important. If you got one day in your life in Florence and you're going to spend 2 hours in line to get into the Uffizi, I can't help you. You got to be better than that in your travels. Use the guidebooks. It makes these cities work better. An hour away, you've got the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Obviously, a lot of tourists there, and they've worked to organize your visit so you can make an appointment and actually go up the tower, which is quite nice. The Duomo, the cathedral there, is just delightful. The tower is tilting a little more every year. It's not tilting this much yet, but we do have to do what we can while we're there to help straighten it out. We always stop there with our groups, and our guides will make an appointment in advance so we arrive and we know we can walk right up that thing. It's interesting the engineering going on to try to straighten up or arrest the tilting of that. I do want to remind you that we've got all of our information on our website at ricksteves.com. You can find, just piles of free information there. 7 years of radio show archives, all of our TV scripts, all sorts of, we've got the graffiti wall where everybody's getting together in the Travelers Helpline. It's a community of travelers sharing information. My Facebook page where I love to give people behind the scenes intimate look at what we're doing. Lots happening on our website and with our guidebooks. I think I've talked about that already. I did make a new cruise book this last year, and it's been very popular, and it's very heavy on Italy, because you can go to Venice, Florence, and Rome by cruise ship. And I mentioned the Art 101 book. When I go to these sites these days, it's interesting to see people, how they do their information. You can have it digitally, you can have it in your ear, you can have it in a big guidebook or a little colorful guidebook. There's just all kinds of ways to package the information. For me, it's really fun in my work to work really hard and make an audio tour and then see somebody who's got me in their ear doing a free tour because they just downloaded it. This is one of my favorite parts of our work, frankly. I work very hard. We've got 40 different tours designed to just give you that free coverage. If you can just download it, get your kids to get, it's called an app, and you put it on your phone, and then you can download everything in advance, and you don't need to be online when you're there. It's just residing in your mobile device. Then when you get to the Forum, the Jewish Quarter, Trastevere, the Uffizi Gallery, the Vatican, St. Peter's, whatever, you've got yourself a finely crafted, beautifully produced, free audio tour to know your limits and to give you a nice, comfortable understanding of it. As you can imagine, I'd love to have more time to talk about these certain things. It's all in the app. Again, it's completely free. Please take full advantage of that app. It's a thrill from a tour guiding point of view to be able to share that with people. We've got a booth on the far side of the room here by the big iceberg down there, and we'll be there until the last people are gone today. I've got 3 people from my staff helping out, and we're there to answer any of your questions about our tours and so on. We do 30 different itineraries all around Europe. I'll just do a quick review of the itineraries that deal with Italy. This is our flagship itinerary, the best of Europe in 20 days. This is my take on the best 3 weeks in Europe. 8 days out of those 20 are in Italy. Okay, starts in Amsterdam, finish in Paris, and you do the biggies in Italy, Venice, Florence, Rome, and the Riviera. Use that whether you're on your own or taking our tour as a basis, and I think you can prioritize that way. This would be the best of Italy in 18 days. That's the new saleable version for us, and that's one of our best-selling tours out of the whole thing. And this would be southern Italy, which is very, very popular for people who have already done the best of Italy. If you just have time for the very core of Italy, this is an 8-day look at Italy. By the way, Volterra, which I don't have a slide for today, is one of my favorite hill towns that a lot of people don't know about. Volterra, really, really great. And for people who just have 10 days and they want the punchiest sightseeing you could possibly imagine, fly into Venice, fly home from Rome, book 3 nights in each of those cities, and I'll tell you, if you're well organized, you've got a great itinerary. It's just big cities, but this is our best-selling tour of any of our tours, and you can do it on your own very easily. If you like my style, you can buy the Rick Steves Venice book, the Florence book, the Rome book. You could get the free audio tours, go off-season, book my favorite hotels in each of these places, and it's amazing how straightforward that would be, and you'd come home with 3 great cities as memories. This is an itinerary called Village Italy. I took this tour once with my family a few years ago, and I loved it. I don't lead our tours anymore. I did that for 25 years. Now I take our tours. I always sign up for a tour each year. This year I just signed up for our Scotland tour. I signed up with a pseudonym, and I actually get letters from me. It's kind of fun. And then I just meet the group over there. But I'll never forget the beautiful time I had doing Village Italy. The point is, 20 days in Italy, 18 days in Italy, none of the big famous places. All sorts of intimate stuff, very Italian, village, handicrafts, cuisine, and it was just a delightful slice of that great country. Again, if you like Italy a lot, consider Sicily, and we do an entire tour on Sicily. I don't have a guidebook on Sicily, but we have a TV show on Sicily. You can download the script on our website or watch it on Hulu, but Sicily is very, very popular. This is my staff. Actually, this is my tour guides. We have a staff that size, and then these are our European tour guides, who we fly into Seattle every winter to have our annual summit where we brainstorm the itineraries and everything. But our tour guides do such a great job. I'm so proud of the work that they do. And as I mentioned earlier, I think we had our best year ever this year. We took 12,000 people on our tours. My favorite statistic is more than half of those people are coming back for a return tour. Many people have taken 10 or 12 of our tours over the years. We have a cumulative discount, so every year you get $50 and it adds up. So, I mean, technically, I suppose we could pay you to take a tour. I don't think anybody's there yet, but it's just for the right people. They're fun tours. That's all covered on our website. With our TV show, it's so nice to be able to work with WTTW, and I come twice a year to WTTW to help them out, and they run my show, which I really appreciate, and you guys watch it, so that's all part of the equation. But we've had a good time doing 20 years of TV shows, and I hope to do 20 more. Okay, I'm going to rip through the rest of this now. When you're going south of Florence, you get into Tuscany and Umbria, and this is hill town country. And San Gimignano is the most famous hill town because it has its skyline preserved. In the old days, remember Montagues and Capulets, the feuding noble families in Romeo and Juliet? Well, that might have been fanciful, but it's based on truth because you had all of these noble families that had their own armies and their own fortifications within these towns. And when a king would come along, he'd say, I don't want noble power, everybody's got to cut off their towers. Well, San Gimignano, for some quirky reason, still has its medieval skyline intact, and you see that when you go to that town. Siena is a great city. In the Middle Ages, it rivaled Florence. Today, it's a little bit stuck in the past, but I just love the main square. This is Il Campo in Siena. One moment, it can be all yours. You come back later in the afternoon, and it's full of people. What's going on? Well, there's all sorts of amazing medieval festivals in Siena, most famously the Palio. So when you go to Siena during Palio time, it's just chaos in a beautiful celebratory way with lots of colorful banners and so on. And in Italy, the cathedrals don't go so tall as they do in France. To make up for their lack of impressive height, my personal philosophy is they decorate the facades more ornately. When you look at the facade in Siena, or in Orvieto or something, you see that Italian Gothic sort of passion for decor. In Siena, you get more halos, more gold leaf, because they didn't embrace the Renaissance as vigorously as Florence did. They hung on to their medieval style. One great way to distinguish your Italian experience is to stay in an agriturismo. In the United States, small farms are just history because it doesn't add up. Well, in Europe, they try to help their small farms compete, and one way is to anoint them, let them call themselves agriturismos. As long as they're a working farm, they can rent out rooms and call themselves an agriturismo. As travelers, it gives us a chance to really connect with the salt-to-the-earth Italian sort of culture, and I love an agriturismo. We list them in our guidebooks, and it can be a great experience if you're looking for the countryside. Tuscany, the word, comes from the root Etrusca, the Etruscans. 500 years before Christ, southern Italy was Magna Graecia, a Greek colony. Northern Italy was Etrusca. This was the land of the Etruscans. We don't know much about the Etruscans, but except for what we've discovered in their tombs. And as you travel, you'll find some fascinating Etruscan tombs, and you can look at all their sarcophagi and marvel at their ancient culture and mysterious culture. Beautiful artisans in these towns. Here you can see a good example of a hill town, built on a natural protrusion, that is a volcanic tuff plug or something like that, providing this natural fortification. And here we have the city filling the top of that little butte. And this is Orvieto. This was the fortified hideout for the Pope. When he felt threatened in Rome, he would retreat north to Orvieto. And today you can tour Orvieto and have a beautiful experience. Again, an Italian-style Gothic facade, more colorfully ornamented than what you would find in France, for instance. Here's a smaller version of that, and I just love this hill town. That, to me, is the classic textbook hill town in Italy. This is called Civita di Bagnoregio. It's one of my original back doors that I kind of built my business on, discovering places like this. I've been taking groups there for 30 years, and it's still a magical experience to go to a little place like this. And those are the places that we obviously talk about with our tour program and in our guidebooks. A salt-to-the-earth chance to see traditional Italy in a small town. Okay, when you think about eating in Italy, you need to pump it up a little bit. You want to go to a nice restaurant, order sparingly, and do things family style. You want a place that is small enough to be, my favorite restaurants are small enough where you meet the chef and where the chef's husband or wife is actually serving. The little restaurants are the ones that have that passion. Eat family style. Remember, a small menu, handwritten in one language. That's your key to a good restaurant. It's small because they're just cooking up enough to sell today economically. One language because they're passionate about local return customers. Handwritten because it's reflecting what was fresh in the market this morning. Your key to really enjoying eating in Italy is eating with the season. In the United States, we feel like we have a right to have, cantaloupe and strawberries all year long. Well, in Italy, you want to eat what is in season. It's grown locally. It's flat out tastier, not to mention more sustainable. And that's what Italians are passionate about. It's sort of in keeping with their slow food movement. Plenty of ways to eat cheap when you're looking for a sandwich shop or something like that. This is my little boy Andy enjoying a pizza, a little bit of pasta. Remember, when you go to Italy, you can have, instead of a salad bar, an antipasto bar. And you pay $10 or $15, and you get to go there and fill your plate up with all those beautiful, very, very tasty Italian specialties. This is Antipasta, who loves to cook for us travelers. Beautiful delis. Chance to get good. If you find a line out the door, like this little place in Siena, with local office workers who go there every day for their lunch, you know that's a good place. You don't need a guidebook. You can see all the office workers line up here every day. This place is spectacular, and they're all over Italy when you know what to look for. I love the passion for wine, and I also like their passion for cheap wine. If you know where to go, you can fill up the tank with wine cheaper than bottled water. The cheapest thing you can buy in Italy that's liquid is wine from a pumping station like this. I'm always looking for cheap ways to travel, and I'm not a cocktail kind of guy, but one of the great things to do in Italy is to spend €5, $7 for a cocktail on the most expensive square in the middle of that city, and you get little munchies with it, and just sit there for an hour and enjoy the parade. This is the main square in Siena. This is happy hour. This is €5. Very, very well spent. Okay, now I'm going to have to blitz right through this because I got 9 minutes to do Rome. I can do that. Forgive me for having to talk so fast here. I will mention, please don't come up until after the class is done, but I have some of the newsletters here. This is a 64-page rundown on my favorite experiences in Europe. It's our catalog also. This is all the way we make money in our office in Seattle, my 80 workmates and me. And what we decided for this year's newsletter is to showcase not the famous sites, but the best experiences. That's really what distinguishes your trip. We've seen the Eiffel Tower, we've seen the Leaning Tower. How am I going to have those experiences? This is a collection of those experiences, plus listing all of our accessories, our bags, our books, our TV shows, and so on. So there's about 50 of them here, but we got lots of them in our over in our office later. I also should mention we're running low on our handouts and everything, but we have plenty of this. This is just a hot sheet that explains all of the stuff that's going on relating to this festival or this travel show today. That we're talking up our tours for sure, and to make this sort of appropriate for the travel show, we're giving $100 off this week for anybody that signs up for a tour. It's very easy to get the code, then you go to our website and sign up and you get the tour at that special price, and this tells all sorts of other stuff that's going on. I don't have them here, but we have them at the Rick Steves booth, which is way over by Antarctica on the other end of this building. And my staff is there. They've got a few other handouts they can help you with if you like. Okay. There are 4 great cities in Europe where you can spend a week, without any doubt. London, Paris, Rome, and Istanbul. Those are the big 4. I absolutely love going into Rome for a week. In the middle of the winter, whatever. It's just great. It's got overlays. You got the classical city, you got the Vatican, you got the Pilgrim city, you got the Baroque city, you got the modern city. So much to do in Rome. When you are going to Rome, you need to put that ancient stuff, you need to bring it to life. I mean, looking at this, I was marveling at how big those arches were, and then I realized those are side chapels in a basilica. That little nub there is what's left of a massive arch that would have put a huge dome or a huge barrel vault over this football field-sized empty lot. And then you fill that in with semi-precious stones and fountains and people in togas, and you try to imagine what Rome was like 2,000 years ago. That's the challenge for tour guides, and we love it. Sitting people down on chunks of broken Rome and trying to make sense of it all. The Colosseum, numbered seats, they could fill it and empty it, 50,000 people as efficiently and quickly as we do our super stadiums. They could draw sails over the top to give people shade. They could flood it and wage mock naval battles. Try to humanize this stuff and bring it to life. And I want to remind you again, you got lots of lines. These people are not waiting to get into the Colosseum. They're waiting to buy a ticket to get into the Colosseum. And if you've got a good guidebook, it will remind you that the ticket is a combo ticket, including the Colosseum and the Palatine Hill. Nobody goes to the Palatine Hill. Walk 100 yards over there, buy your ticket at the Palatine Hill turnstile, and then go back and walk right by all of these people. Not saying anything too smug, go directly in, have a great time, and then get the heck out of there. You just saved an hour because you knew how to work the system. You've got to be smart or you're going to waste a lot of precious vacation time in those kind of lines. Once you get inside, you need to put it together. Imagine the Pantheon. This is a building that gives you a feeling for the magnificence and the splendor of Rome better than any other building. It was designed to be a temple to all the gods. Pantheon. And then it was, Rome fell, and it immediately became a church to all the martyrs. So it wasn't vacated long enough to cannibalize. Consequently, we have the best preserved building of ancient Rome, giving us a feeling unrivaled at the magnificence and the splendor of Rome at its zenith. And you step in there and you see it's exactly designed like the big circle. So typical of Roman engineering, so logical, exactly as wide, 140 feet as it is tall, with a glorious skylight on top. It's a beautiful thing to sit in there and understand this is the crowds during the middle of the day. It's literally all yours if you go early or late. It's free. Why would you go in the middle of the day when you can have it literally all to yourself if you simply go early or late? Nearby is the Capitol Hill, wonderful interior museums. Here, this is the sort of much hated Victor Emmanuel Monument. It's just 100 years old, built on the Capitol Hill to make the king feel good. I've come to like this building because it gives me a feeling of the pomposity of ancient Rome today. If you wonder what Rome looked like today on the scale and everything, take 200 of these buildings and put them side by side to make a downtown, and I think that's what you got. I mean, on that scale, this thing is huge, it's overwhelming, it's pompous. That's kind of the architecture of ancient Rome 2,000 years ago. The nice news is you can go to the top of that monument now for the greatest view in the city, because you can use the modern elevator for $10 to get up there. And the added bonus is you're on top of the building that you don't want to look at. You get to see everything else. This building here has more great art in it, if you like Baroque, than I think almost any building. This is the glorious, sumptuous, that's a good word for this, Villa Borghese, the Borghese Gallery. Go in here and you've got the greatest statues by Bernini, the father of the Baroque movement. I think my single favorite statue anywhere is Apollo chasing Daphne by Bernini. If you know where to look in Florence, Milan, and Rome, you can see most of Michelangelo's finished statues. Here we have Moses. This is a 10-minute walk away from the Colosseum. It's free, and it opens before the Colosseum. If you're on the ball, when you do the Colosseum, you can go early and take half an hour to see Michelangelo's Moses in the St. Peter and Change Church, and then get down to the Colosseum just in time for it to open. Remember, if you want bones, your key word is capuchin. You know the word cappuccino? Coffee? That's called cappuccino because it looks like a capuchin's cowl with the dark brown and the light brown on the top. And the Capuchin monks have an interesting habit of hanging their dead brothers up to dry down in the basement. And when all the flesh is rotted away, they take the bones and they decorate with them. And then they let the tourists come in there and remind them that in a little while you're going to be just like that. It's just a reminder in the middle of our vacations of our mortality. Okay, you go to the Vatican and it's all based on this. Tu es Petrus, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. Here we have the church built over the tomb of St. Peter, who was martyred there. And when you see a guy with a bushy beard and a key, you know that is St. Peter, okay? When you go to the Vatican, you got to remember this obelisk here. And a good tour guide will keep his group in the shade when they're talking about this. This obelisk conceivably could have been seen by Peter on the day he was killed, because this was the centerpiece of the Roman chariot race course. And back then, before the age of marching bands for halftime entertainment, they would martyr Christians, okay? So they killed Peter there. After the chariot race, his followers came, got his body, and buried him on a humble little graveyard on what was called the Vatican Hill. For 300 years, Christians worshipped in secret after dark on Peter's little tomb. And then in 312, Emperor Constantine became a Christian. Suddenly it's okay to worship on St. Peter's tomb as a Christian, and they built a huge church there. That church lasted for 1,200 years until Michelangelo helped design the church we see today. It's an amazing story, and when we go to Rome, we've got to see St. Peter's Basilica. You can go to the top of the dome for a great view of the Vatican grounds and a view looking out over the city. Stepping inside, it's just the most incredible experience. Of course, you can see Michelangelo's Pieta there. Next to the church, we've got the biggest museum around. This is the Vatican Museum. Well worth checking out, and you do need some help to enjoy the Vatican Museum. We have an audio tour for that, and it's covered well in our guidebooks, but here's where you've got 1,500 years collection of gifts and acquisitions of the popes. They've been important guys for a long time, and they've amassed an incredible collection of antiquities. And one of my favorite shots is this, because I can see one of my groups after a grueling day or a grueling tour of the great sites of Italy with our guide Brad having a great time in the Vatican Museum. The art should be fun, but you need a guide to help keep it fun and make it meaningful. The climax of your visit would be the Sistine Chapel, and here you see on the ceiling the Creation, designed by Michelangelo, and then later on we got the Last Judgment with a vindictive Christ coming down on Judgment Day. It's so fun to put the art in context, and then you can understand why the ceiling is a little more humanist and the painting of the Last Judgment on the wall behind the altar is a little more hell and damnation. There's a lot going on, and you need to know the context to appreciate the art. I don't have time to talk about that now. I will remind you, in Rome, there's two overlays of visitors. You've got you and me, typical tourists, and then we've got pilgrims. There's so many pilgrims that come to Rome. They don't even go to the places we're interested in. They're, ready to climb the Scala Santa, the sacred steps, the holy steps on their knees. People have been doing for 1,700 years. Constantine's mother was a pilgrim in the Holy Land, and she would bring back all sorts of souvenirs and mementos. And I imagine Kunze was going, "Oh, Mom, you brought back, you know, the stairway of Pontius Pilate's mansion. Okay, we'll stick it up here. You know, supposedly the stairs that Jesus climbed on the day he was condemned." Well, since then, pilgrims come here, and it's exciting as us travelers, regardless of your religion or whatever, to be aware of all of these sites and check them out as well. Every night in Rome, they close down the main drag to traffic, and everybody comes out to stroll. It's that passeggiata, and that's something we need to get into if we really want to understand the city. I like an evening where we tie together the great night spots, the Campo di Fiori, the Piazza Navona, the Trevi Fountain, the Spanish Steps, and you can do that very easily on a beautiful nighttime walk through the city. Outside of Rome, you've got ancient roads leading away. The Appian Way is a very impressive example of Roman engineering. You've got the ancient port of Ostia. If you don't have time to get down to Pompeii, remember, half an hour south of Rome is Ostia, the ancient seaport of Rome, once a bustling port town of 60,000 people. It became depopulated because of malaria, buried by the sands of time, today excavated, giving us a look that rivals Pompeii at what life was like in ancient Rome. The cool thing about this is it's a half-hour ride away from downtown Rome rather than a big trip south to Pompeii. If you got more time and energy, go further south. I love Naples. Naples is like an urban jungle. From Naples, you'll want to enjoy the pizza in its birthplace. You'll want to get out and enjoy the basso living in the streets. I find Naples is just a festival of life. I love it, but it's crusty, it's edgy, it's scary to a lot of travelers, and they have a certain amount of Neapolitan chaos. Invariably, there'll be a strike going on, and you got literal mountains of garbage. Don't worry about it. It's, you know, they've been living this way for 2,000 years, for 2,500 years in Neapolis, the Greek city of, the new city, Neapolis. They've got a street plan that goes back to Greek times in the old crusty quarter. Wonderful markets in Naples. I would spend plenty of time in Naples, but I would stay an hour south in Sorrento, okay? Now here we see Mount Vesuvius. That's the volcano that erupted 79 years after Christ. Looking at it from Naples, it created a mud flow that buried Pompeii right here. And there was excavated in neoclassical times just a couple hundred years ago. Today, here's Pompeii, here's Vesuvius before it erupted. This piece of art was done before 79 AD. You know, we've got, you know, Mount St. Helens in Washington is cut off about there also. It's interesting that, you know, people actually painted it there. And today you can go to the top of this volcano. It's still very hot, and you can look down into the crater, and you can imagine the day it blew, burying Pompeii. I've written an audio guide. It's a free audio guide on my app. I hope you can use that when you go to Pompeii, because it's tough to put all this stuff together. I've got great friends who are guides all over Europe. I get to hire them, pick their brains, send them all sorts of business. They let me use their material, incorporate it into these audio tours so you can have it for free. But when you go to Pompeii, you're going to get that incredible look at what ancient Rome was like. I do want to remind you, the Italians took all of the great art of Pompeii and put it in the National Museum in Naples. If you want to see Pompeii in its entirety, you've got to go to the National Museum in Naples in concert with your visit to the site out at Pompeii, because it'll blow you away, the beautiful art they've got at the National Museum in Naples. From Sorrento, you make that your home base, and you can, this is Sorrento here, it's limoncello kind of town, great gelato, great limoncello, great elegance. From there you can go down and see the Amalfi Coast. Look at that dreamy coastline. Treacherously beautiful, very steep. This is Positano. We have so much fun filming there. And this is an area where you want to hire a taxi who speaks English to be your driver, so you don't have to worry about parking and everything. It's a bit of a splurge, but 3 or 4 people team up, hire a taxi for the day, and you can do the Amalfi Coast correctly. Take the boat for an hour out to Capri. It's a beautiful experience to see Capri. When you do go to Capri, there's a bit of a tourist attraction called the Blue Grotto. And all the tour groups, all the cruise ships go there, and you get into the little rowboat, you slide way down into the gully of it, and then it's kind of a hoot, really, and they pull you through, and you pop open in this gorgeous cave inside. Bit of a tourist racket, but one of the fun experiences you can have. Also, nearby is Paestum, which is a gorgeous ancient Greek temple in Italy, just south of Naples. Quick look at Sicily. You got great Greek ruins there, like this theater at Taormina with a wonderful view. My favorite town in Sicily is called Cefalù, but you get this kind of character there with a beautiful beach and a rugged interior. And just a quick review now. We started in Milan, up to Lake Como, Alps of Italy, Venice, Florence, Cinque Terre, Pisa, Siena, Assisi, we didn't do Assisi I guess, Orvieto, Naples, Sorrento, Pompeii, Pesta, Amalfi Coast, and finishing in Rome. That would be your best 3-week itinerary. Okay, so what I want to do now is apologize for being a few minutes late. Remind you that our booth is over by the iceberg down there, and my staff there can answer questions about anything you might have. I'm going to be right here, and again, I'll be going through autographs, and you can pick up books from the store there. They've got a lot of Italy books. They got a smattering of other books, but if you need the Italy book, they would have it there along with Venice, Florence, and Rome. Sorry to talk so fast. I hope that was interesting. Thank you very much, and happy travels. Thank you. Grazie.